I've always found certainly that every time technology comes along, people say, oh, well, you wouldn't need an accountant now because you'd be able to do this, that, and the other. And it never seems to work. I think people need that reassurance that, they're not going to get into trouble, they're going to be sent to jail and all of these things, or they're going to be hit with a massive tax bill they didn't expect. And the problem for people is that the tax code in the UK is, I think, the longest in the world. It goes on forever. And there's always some little thing ready to trip you up.
Hello and welcome to the show. I've got Alex with us today. Alex Redmond has been amazing support on my business journey so far, and he's always got great insights to share. So really excited to have this conversation with him today. So Alex, welcome to the show. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what do you do and tell us about your business.
My business is called Artisan Accounts. So we're accountants, we're based in Redmond in London, and we try to give more than accounting. We do business advice and things like EIS and film tax credits. Our focus is very much on the creative sector, so which there is exactly our ideal client. We've worked together for well over 10 years. Before I did this, I used to work in engineering companies, so I know what that side of the world is like as well. But I really enjoy working with small businesses and finding out how to make them tick better.
But tell us a bit about your journey. Sort of, where did you get started? Did you always want to go into accounting? What was your journey like?
No, I never wanted to go into accounting. But I found myself at a certain point in my life with no real qualifications and needing to earn some money. And accounting was something I could do in my spare time, and I found it relatively simple. So I went down that road. I was helped by some employers who were supportive, and it went from there. And then, as I say, I worked in industry engineering companies for the best part of 20 years. And then I set up on my own in this practice, hoping to bring that kind of big company analysis to the world of small business.
And tell us about the journey about setting up your business. I mean, we all face big challenges normally when we start out. What were some of the challenges that you faced?
Well, I suppose typical of lots of businesses was getting the work in to start with, and building the customer base. So I'm lucky in the sense that for accountants, we tend to hold on to our clients for a reasonable amount of time. So this year's marketing builds on what we've already done, unlike a lot of creatives who have to go from project to project. But it's still a challenge, especially in the beginning, to get up to a critical mass. And cash flow is obviously crucial. Like many businesses, I've ran into a lot of cash flow issues, especially in the beginning. And that's why I push people a lot to look at their cash flow, to do cash flow analysis, and not just say, oh, the money's in the bank. So what happened to me, as with many people, is when I started out, I took a loan. I thought, oh, great, I have some money. I'll spend it on marketing, I'll spend it on this, spend it on that. And then the loan was gone, the work hadn't come in yet, I had to repay the loan, and I didn't have anything to dip into either. So that really taught me very early on that you really need to not just keep an eye on the bank balance, but see what's coming in and going out over the next months.
With your sort of wealth of experience, I mean, you've seen so many small businesses come and go, and worked with so many entrepreneurs. If someone starting out, what would you say from an accounting perspective? Is it that they need to make sure that what do they need to do to make sure that they're starting off on a solid foundation? A few maybe common mistakes that people make. I mean, other than the cash flow something that we've touched on just now.
Yes.
But sort of common mistakes that's avoidable, that helps businesses build a solid foundation when they get started.
The key is obviously looking after your customers and knowing who your customers are, and that sounds quite straightforward, but really when you start with a blank canvas and you say, well, who am I chasing? How am I going to reach them? And it's important to do your research in terms of understanding where you're going to find your customers, and also who they actually are, because you can say, I want to target filmmakers, but that's very, very wide range of people, and it's not necessarily that easy to locate them in one place. But there are groups on places like LinkedIn that have people perhaps in your geographical area, in your sector, that can help with things like this. I was just speaking to a guy this morning who got my name from a WhatsApp group that lots of producers and directors use, which I didn't even know existed. So that was lovely. But it's just being in the right place at the right time for your clients is a very important step. And having a plan really to know what you're expecting to do. So not just in terms of cash flow, which we talked about, but in terms of your marketing efforts and your delivery. So all of these things take time as well as money. And if you don't budget for the fact or allow for the fact that you're going to have to spend, 2 days a week marketing and for 3 days of work a week when you're earning money, that's obviously not the same as earning money all the time. So if you think, I have a day rate of £400, I'll earn £2,000 a week, it's not that simple, because you need to sacrifice some of that time to go and find next week's work. And it's really important to understand, what you really need to do to get the income you need or you want. So I had somebody once who wanted to open a sweet shop selling old-fashioned sweets, and they weren't going to charge £1 a time or something like this. And I had to point out to them that, they're going to have to sell about 4 million sweets to break even, and they just couldn't get it. But they went to open the shop and it went bust, but that's another story. But, you really need to understand what it takes to earn what you need.
What you say about the referrals is so it's so important. I mean, I've referred so many people to you already, because when you've got a relationship with someone, especially your accountant, I suppose I always say you have to have an accountant, a solicitor, and a personal relationship with these people, because they're the ones you count on to keep you out of jail.
Yeah.
So it's important to have that personal relationship. How do you maintain that personal relationship? What's your approach to keeping that relationship with your clients?
It's all about communication, isn't it? So we do newsletters and emails, things like that. When there's if something comes up that's relevant to a client, we try and tell them individually. So to let them know that we're thinking about them, and here's something that might be useful to them. And it's about keeping in touch and being available. So when you have a query, we try to answer it promptly and properly, and make sure that that you feel you're being looked after. And from our point of view, also, it's much better to provide a bit of useful information up front rather than trying to clear up the mess afterwards, which is often the case, that people are reluctant to get in touch. So we have a kind of open door, open phone policy, and we just try to make sure that people are given the right steer when they need it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely one of the things that I appreciate the most about you, is I know I can send you an email anytime, because questions pop up, and if you don't address them at the time, it can cause real problems later on. And knowing that you've got that support there, where I can just pick up the phone, I can just send an email, and I'll have a nearly instant response, is something that I've certainly appreciated about working with you. Do you have a policy in place with the people that work for you? How do you make sure that level of customer service that you offer, which is such a valuable part of the service that you offer, that it cascades down, to everyone that works in Artisan Accounts?
Yeah, well, it's part of our employee onboarding and training, and there's an expectation that emails will be responded to within 24 hours. And if we can't always say, here's your answer, but we can say we're on the case and we get back to you within X amount of time. And I'm in the fortunate position that if somebody doesn't get a response from one of my team quickly enough, then generally people give me a call and say what's going on. So that helps me to keep everyone on their toes and give me feedback about how well we're doing or not.
The accounting industry is changing quite a lot, I think, from two perspectives. Firstly, technology, which is changing all the time. And then secondly, sort of, it seems to me, and it'd be great to get your insights on this as well, that the structure is changing, with a lot of smaller accountancy firm being picked up by bigger groups. So firstly, from a technology perspective, how do you think things are changing, and what will it mean not just for people who have accountancy firms, but for small businesses in general?
Yeah, well, it's very interesting, and like many industries, we are at risk, if you like, from AI. That already a lot of the software we use can help us to do things more quickly with AI, to say that your O2 bill is a telephone and there's VAT in it and so on. The programs learn that and can help us to do things more accurately and more quickly. And obviously, then for our clients, that makes it easier for them to do their own bookkeeping, and increasingly they be able to get insights from the software to say, well, this is what you need to look at in your business. We hopefully will still have a role to play in giving some real person advice and guiding people through the various pitfalls. I've always found certainly that every time technology comes along, people say, oh, well, you wouldn't need an accountant now because you'd be able to do this, that, and the other. And it never seems to work. I think people need that reassurance that, they're not going to get into trouble, they're going to be sent to jail and all of these things, or they're going to be hit with a massive tax bill they didn't expect. And the problem for people is that the tax code in the UK is, I think, the longest in the world. It goes on forever. And there's always some little thing ready to trip you up. So obviously AI will be able to navigate through that. But for me, I believe that that people will still need accountants. Also, me personally, I'm trying to move more into a kind of consulting coaching role, which again fits in with that. The key to doing anything from where I'm sitting is having good, up-to-date information. So AI will help with that, and then enable me to spend more time on the qualitative stuff.
With accountancy, it's all about the personal relationships, because again, it's about that trust. Yeah. And I speak to quite a lot of mortgage brokers, because that's an industry that we work in quite a lot, and they find the similar thing where people want people aided by technology rather than just technology. Because if you applying for a mortgage for a £800,000 house is the same as almost submitting your your tax returns, you don't want to click that button. You want to just speak to someone to see that, okay, the machine has done its job properly.
Yes.
So I think there's always going to be, and I think it's going to be the same with law, with all these industries that's so dependent on personal relationships, where you still want to just have that comfort that, okay, it's okay, it's going to be fine.
Yeah, it's certainly, if anyone tells me they're looking for a mortgage, I always tell them to go and speak to a mortgage broker first, because they just jump right in and say, oh, there's a deal from Santander, I'll apply for it. And especially with our clients, as opposed to somebody on 150,000 on PAYE, people who have kind of creative businesses with lumpy income, it's not obvious that every deal is going to be available to you. So a mortgage broker will know which banks will be amenable, which ones will focus on the last year's earnings, even if they ask for more than that, or which ones will average your last 3 years, and so on. So, and it's really important to have that knowledge, and that doesn't seem to be available except from people.
Absolutely. So, about the structure of the industry, the accountancy. Are you finding the same thing? Are you looking at Artisan Accounts to maybe do the same thing, become part of a bigger group? As you say, you're stepping away a little bit to focus more on consulting.
Yeah, well, we have a long-term relationship with Affinity Associates, who are a larger group, and they've got an outpost in India who look after a lot of our back office stuff. And we're getting closer to them. And as I kind of transition to a slightly different role, then they'll become more involved. But certainly there's a lot of private equity coming into the accounting world in the last couple of years, and there's a lot of consolidation going on. We quite often pick up clients from people who say, oh yeah, I had a lovely accountant, but they were taken over, and now I just deal with a different person every time, and it doesn't feel the same. There's that personal relationship is missing, and that's the difficult thing to keep going. So I don't know what will happen. The last time there was a consolidation was about 20 or 30 years ago, and it pretty much fell apart, because the whole logic of these things is that you're going to save money and put less qualified people into the various roles, and maybe with AI that'll be possible, or maybe. But previously it didn't seem to be sustainable. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, it's not only accounting; lots of areas are undergoing consolidation, but. It's certainly something I'm very much aware of.
So looking at the wider economic outlook, it seems like we're in for a bit of turbulent times. But obviously with that comes challenges and opportunities. So in your experience, what do you think are the challenges and perhaps the opportunities for small businesses?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people are finding it very difficult at the moment. I had an interesting chat with somebody last week who was saying that their small jobs or work from small clients had pretty much dried up, but the large jobs were doing really well. So that suggests that smaller businesses are turning to AI to try and cut costs, whereas larger businesses who need a more professional approach for films and things rely even more now on the professionals to harness those technology, as you say. I think there's a lot of turbulence ahead, and I think people need to be very adaptable and fluid, and keep an eye on what's happening, and whether their approach is the right approach for the market as it is today. So it could be that you need to pivot to a slightly different model or look at a different marketplace. But, there's skills are still needed. There's opportunities. So it's really important to keep your finger on the pulse and try to find out where those opportunities are.
So, if someone wants to follow in your footsteps, what's one piece of advice that you'd give them?
Prepare your ground carefully. Be sure what you want to do and why. The why thing is very kind of fashionable at the moment, but it's important because that's your motivation and that's what keeps you going, and that kind of steers your business when times are a little bit uncertain, as they seem to be almost all the time now. But when just really understand what it is you're trying to achieve and why, and maybe really talk through it with somebody you trust who can give you proper advice. Because lots of people, creatives typically, say, "Yeah, I love whatever I'm doing. I'm going to make a business out of it. My hobby or my passion is going to be my business. Is going to be great." And you really need to think about the whole thing as a business, and understand exactly what you think you're going to get out of it and how you're going to get there. It's all very well saying, "Yeah, I'm going to have £1 million business in 3 years," but it's not going to happen without you taking action. And it's understanding what those actions are and getting somebody then to keep you accountable to make sure you stay on track.
And if someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way they can reach you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, or there's the website artisan-accounts.co.uk. I'm sure you'll pass on my number if anyone asks.
Yeah.
So I'm quite easy to get hold of. So
great stuff.
Don't be shy.
Alex, thank you so much. This was a really, really good conversation. Really
I very much enjoyed it.
Okay. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks a million. Bye.